A wagon held together by nothing but prayers, a mule that had given up on life, and inside, a mother with 3 starving children, running from a man who swore he would hunt them to the ends of the earth. When Martha Hale knocked on a stranger's door that freezing November night, she had nothing left. No money. No hope. Just 3 pairs of small, terrified eyes looking to her for answers she didn't have. The man who opened that door? He hadn't spoken to another soul in 3 years. He came to this mountain to disappear, to bury his grief and forget what it meant to feel anything at all. But when he saw those children shivering in the cold, something inside him that had been dead for years woke up. Now a dangerous man is coming, a man who believes blood gives him the right to own people, and he will stop at nothing to take what he thinks belongs to him. The question is, will this broken rancher risk everything to protect a family that isn't his? This story reminds us that the family we choose can be stronger than the family we're born into, and that healing begins when we stop running and start standing our ground. If you've ever felt alone and wished someone would fight for you, this story is for you. Subscribe and stay until the very end. I promise it's worth it. And tell me in the comments, do you believe love can be built from courage instead of chemistry? The wind howled down from the mountains with a bite. Ethan Cole stood on his porch watching the last bit of daylight fade away. He didn't mind the quiet. Out here, being alone wasn't just a choice, it was a shield. He pulled the worn notice from his pocket. Cook wanted. That's all it said. He'd written it 3 weeks ago after he burned another dinner. Pride had made him wait to post it, but an empty stomach finally won out. Old Samuel Briggs at the trading post had given him a look. He said, "You sure about this, Cole? Inviting a stranger all the way up here?" Ethan had just shrugged. "I just need someone who can cook food, not make charcoal." Samuel pushed his glasses up his nose. Sometimes what a man needs and what he gets are 2 entirely different things. Standing there in the twilight, Ethan figured nobody was coming anyway. The sensible folks were hunkered down for the winter. Then he heard it. The groan of wagon wheels on frozen dirt. Ethan's hand went right to the rifle he kept on the porch. Visitors this time of year were usually bad news. A wagon appeared from the trees. It looked like it was held together with hope and baling wire. One wheel wobbled something awful. The canvas top was more patches than canvas. It was a quilt of old repairs. The mule pulling it looked like it had given up on ever resting again. When it got closer, Ethan saw the driver. A woman, younger than he expected. Her face looked like it had forgotten what it felt like to smile. Her hands on the reins were red raw from the cold. But what really got him was the sight in the back of that wagon. 3 little kids, 2 girls and a boy, huddled under a blanket so thin you could read a newspaper through it. They stared at him with big, weary eyes. The woman stopped the mule at the bottom of his steps. They just looked at each other for a long moment, each one sizing up the other. "Are you Ethan Cole?" Her voice was quiet, but it carried. "I am. You put up a notice for a cook." "I did." He paused. Didn't figure anyone would answer it this late in the year. She looked straight at him. "Being desperate makes folks do foolish things. Do you still need somebody?" Ethan's gaze drifted back to the children. The oldest girl had her arms wrapped tight around the other 2. The little boy's lips were tinged blue with a cold that had settled deep in his bones. "I needed a cook," he said slowly. "I am not so sure I needed a cook and 3 little ones." He saw a flicker of understanding on her face. Not surprise, just the look of a person used to bad news. She picked up the reins to leave. "We will move on. There is another town a day's ride from here. Hold on." The words came out sharper than he meant. Ethan walked down the steps, moving slow like he was approaching a wild horse. "I did not say I was sending you away. What is your name?" "Martha Hale. The children are mine. Sarah is 9, Clara is 6, and Thomas is 4. She listed their names like they were the only thing she had left in the world. They are good kids, quiet, Won't cause you no trouble." Ethan knew desperation when he saw it. He glanced at their few belongings in the wagon. "Can you cook?" "Yes, sir. Can you do it without setting my kitchen on fire?" For the first time, he saw a hint of a smile. "I've fed my own family for 10 years and the house is still standing. I reckon I can handle yours." Ethan looked back at his ranch house. It was a big, solid place built by his granddaddy. It had 4 bedrooms upstairs, all of them empty. The kitchen was big enough for a whole crew of ranch hands. There was plenty of room, too much room. "There is a room off the kitchen," he heard himself say. "It is small, but it is warm. You and the children can have it for the night. We will figure things out in the morning." Martha Hale just stared at him, completely stunned. "You are offering us a room in your house?" "Well, I am not about to put children in a barn in November. Get your family inside before they turn to ice. I will see to your mule." He did not wait for an answer. He just went to unhitch the tired animal. Behind him, he heard her soft voice telling the kids to be careful as they climbed down. In the barn, he gave the mule some hay and water. He stood there for a minute in the quiet, listening to the animal breathe. What in the world had he just done? He came to this place to be left alone. He had built a simple, safe life. Now, he had just invited 4 strangers to live with him. What Samuel had said came back to him. Sometimes what a man needs and what he gets are 2 entirely different things. He shook his head and walked back to the house. The kitchen was already warmer. Martha had the fire going in the stove. The little boy, Thomas, was pressed against her side. His face was flushed from the heat. The 2 girls stood by the door, holding hands and watching everything with those big, solemn eyes. They were all so thin. You could tell they had not seen a square meal in a long, long time. "The room is through that door," Ethan said, pointing. "It is not much, but you will be warm in there." Martha spoke as if warmth was the only thing left in the world that mattered. "Maybe it was," she said softly. "Thank you, Mr. Cole." He shook his head. "Ethan, if you're going to be in my kitchen, you might as well use my name." He walked over to the cupboard and pulled out what little he had. Some bread from town, dried deer meat, and a jar of preserves. "It's late for a real supper, but this ought to hold you all over till sunup." He placed the food on the table, then stepped away to give them their space. Martha guided her children to the chairs like she'd done it 1,000 times, dividing the small meal with a careful hand. She knew how to make a little go a long way. She tore the bread, gave each child a sliver of meat, and spread the preserves thin as a whisper. Ethan watched from the stove, amazed at how the kitchen went from being his quiet, empty space to a room full of life. He heard the scrape of chairs and Martha's soft words to her kids. "When did they last have a real meal?" Martha answered without even looking up. "Yesterday morning. We had a little money, but the innkeeper in the valley..." Her voice trailed off. Ethan went back to the cupboard for more food, but Martha's hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "We don't take handouts, sir. We can't repay you." "This ain't a handout," he said, meeting her dark, steady eyes. "It's an advance on your wages." Her hand stayed on his wrist for a second more before she let go. She gave a single, firm nod and turned back to her children. While they ate, Ethan went to check on the small room off the kitchen. It was tiny, maybe 10 feet square, with a narrow bed against the wall. The stovepipe ran through it, making it the warmest spot in the house besides the kitchen itself. He had been using it for storage, filling it with boxes of old things he couldn't part with. He hauled the boxes out to the barn, promising himself he'd sort through them later. Then he went upstairs and found some blankets in a closet. They smelled a bit like cedar, but they were clean. He piled them on the bed. It wasn't much, he knew, but it was warm and dry. And for Martha and her children, it was safe. When he returned, the children were done eating, leaning on each other and looking sleepy. Martha was already at the sink, starting on the dishes, moving with a tired grace. "Leave that be," Ethan said quietly. "Get your family settled in for the night. You can start earning your keep in the morning." Martha paused, then dried her hands and gently gathered her children. As they walked past him toward their new room, Each child gave him a quick, shy look. The oldest girl, Sarah, stopped right in front of him. She looked up at him with her mother's serious eyes. "Thank you for the supper, Mr. Cole." Her voice was small but clear. "You're welcome, Sarah." The girl's eyes widened, surprised he remembered her name. Then she hurried to join her mother. Martha paused in the doorway. "Mr. Cole, Ethan, I know you took a chance on us. I promise I won't make you regret it." "See that you don't," he answered, his voice a little rough. He never was good with thanks. "Breakfast is at dawn. The kitchen is yours." "Yes, sir," she said. But then she hesitated. "Why did you help us? You could have just shut the door." Ethan thought for a moment. He thought about the cold he saw in those kids' eyes and the pride in Martha's posture. He thought about how lonely the house had been. "Because I know what it's like to need a helping hand," he said. "And no child ought to sleep in a cold barn when there's a warm bed nearby." Martha just looked at him for a long moment, and he saw something change in her face. Then she nodded and quietly closed the door. For a while, Ethan just stood there in his kitchen, listening to the soft sounds of a family settling in. He banked the fire and locked the doors before heading up to his own cold room. Tomorrow would bring a whole new set of problems. He'd have to figure out how this was all going to work. But tonight, for the first time in 3 long years, his house felt a little less empty. And that felt something like peace. Outside, the wind howled, but inside the ranch house, 5 people were warm and safe. Winter had come, but for the first time in a long while, Ethan Cole wasn't facing it all by himself. The next morning was gray and cold. Ethan woke up to the smell of coffee. For a second, he thought he'd dreamed the whole thing. Then he heard someone moving around downstairs. He dressed in the chilly air and made his way down. The kitchen already felt different. The stove was hot and a fresh pot of coffee was steaming. The table was clean and Martha stood at the counter slicing bread like she'd been doing it in this very spot for years. She looked up when he came in. "Good morning. I hope I didn't wake you." "No," Ethan said, moving toward the warmth of the stove. "Coffee smells good. There's bacon and eggs if you want them. I found what you had in the pantry. I hope you don't mind I took a look. I need to know what we're working with to plan the meals." She sounded almost like she was expecting a fight. Ethan poured a cup of coffee. It was strong and hot, better than he ever made it. "The kitchen's your domain now," he told her. "Pantry and root cellar, too. Just let me know when we're running low on something." "Where are the children?" "Still asleep. They were worn out." Martha turned the bacon in the skillet. "I figured I'd let them rest. A full belly and a warm bed will do them good." Ethan knew what she wasn't saying. Her children had been cold and hungry for a long, long time. He leaned against the counter, sipping his coffee. In the pale morning light, he could see she was a pretty woman, but worn down by a hard life. Her hair was already pinned up neatly, and her old blue dress was clean. There was a quietness about her, like she tried to take up as little space as possible. "You said you were a widow." Her hand paused for just a second. "Yes. My husband passed 4 months back. An accident at the mill." "I'm sorry to hear that." "Don't be," she said, her voice flat. Then she added, "It was quick." Ethan heard the lie. Not about the death, but about the sadness. Martha Hale talked about her late husband like she was talking about yesterday's weather. "How'd you end up way out here?" "We were in Ohio. After he died, there were debts, and we lost the house. I have family in Montana. My aunt wrote and said there was work if I could just get there." She moved the bacon from the skillet to a plate, her hands steady and sure. "We tried to be careful, but winter caught us at Hollow Ridge. The wagon was in bad shape, and my boy Thomas got a fever. We had to stop. Then I saw your notice. My aunt in Montana will figure I am not coming." Martha put 3 eggs in the pan, more than Ethan ever made for himself. They sizzled in the grease. He watched how she moved, sure and practiced, like a woman who had run a home for years. "You will need wages," he said. "I can pay $10 a month plus room and board for you and the kids. That is a fair price for a place this size." Martha looked at him. "It is more than fair. Most places would offer 7. "Most places do not have 3 more mouths to feed," Ethan replied. "I figure good cooking is worth paying for." She almost smiled. "I accept." "Good," he said, moving to the door. "I will be out on the property most mornings, checking cattle and making sure the water is not frozen. The house is yours. Let the children help if they can. Otherwise, just keep them warm. That is all." He was getting his coat when Martha spoke again. "Mr. Cole, I need to ask you something." He turned. "If someone comes looking for us," she said, looking right at him, "I need to know if you will tell them we are here." The kitchen went quiet. A lone crow called out from somewhere outside. He studied her face and saw the fear she was trying so hard to hide. "Is someone likely to come looking?" "I do not know," she said, her voice raw. "But if they do, I have not seen any woman with 3 children." Ethan pulled his coat on. "Far as anyone needs to know, I hired a widow named Martha. It is nobody's business but ours." Some of the tightness left her shoulders. "Thank you. Do not thank me yet. Winter is long up here. We might not like each other by spring." He said it with a hint of a smile. Outside, the cold was sharp. A few new inches of snow covered the ground. The gray sky promised more. The barn was warmer, filled with the steam of the animal's breath. He checked the mule first. The animal seemed settled, knowing its traveling was done for a while. The milk cows and other cattle were all fine. He was cleaning a stall when the barn door opened. It was Sarah, the oldest girl. She stood there in a thin coat, looking watchful. "Mama sent me to ask if you need anything." Ethan leaned on his pitchfork. "She has her mother's serious eyes. Your mama let you come out here by yourself?" "She is watching from the window," Sarah said, pointing to the house. "She said I should be useful to earn my keep. You are 9 years old. Your job is to be 9, not earn your keep." The girl just blinked, not understanding. "But Mama works, so I should too." Ethan sighed. "Tell you what, you can help me get the eggs from the chicken coop. That would be a real help." Sarah's face lit up for the first time. "I am good at gathering eggs. I did it at home before." She stopped, her face falling again. "Before you lost your home," Ethan finished for her, his voice gentle. "I know. Your mama told me about what happened to your father." The girl stared at her boots. "Mama said we are not to talk about him." "Then we will not," he said. "Come on." He led her to the coop on the side of the barn. They gathered the eggs in a comfortable quiet. Sarah was good, just like she said. "Mr. Cole?" she asked in a small voice. "Is it true you will let us stay all winter? That is what I told your mama, even though we are trouble." Ethan looked down at the small girl who thought she was a burden. Something in his chest felt tight. "You are not trouble, Sarah. You are folks who needed a hand. That is all." She thought about that for a moment. They finished and went back into the barn's warmth. "You can go back to the house now," Ethan told her. "Tell your mama I will be in for lunch around noon." She started to leave, but then turned back. "Mr. Cole, at our old home, my father got angry about little things. A broken plate, or if we cried." She took a breath. "Will you get angry if we make noise?" The question hit Ethan hard. He knelt down to her level. "Sarah, now you listen to me. I don't get worked up over a broken plate. Accidents are just part of life on a ranch. Things get broken. What's important is that you are safe, warm, and have a full belly. Do you understand?" She looked at his face, trying to see if he truly meant it. Then she gave a slow nod. "Okay." She turned and headed back to the house, holding that egg basket ever so carefully. Ethan watched her until Martha pulled her safely inside. He went back to his chores with a strange new feeling in his chest. The day went on with the usual rhythm of ranch work. By noon, the house was filled with the smell of real food. Martha had a thick vegetable and salt pork soup simmering, with fresh bread for dipping. The children ate at the table, quieter than mice, but not as scared as the night before. Young Thomas even had some color back in his cheeks. "This is mighty good," Ethan said after his first bite. Martha filled his bowl again before he could ask. "Sarah tells me she helped you with the eggs." "She sure did. A real good helper." Sarah hid her face, but not before Ethan saw her little smile. The meal carried on in a comfortable quiet. It was the kind of silence that comes when folks are too busy enjoying their food to talk. After lunch, Ethan went back outside. The air got colder as a north wind began to blow. By the time dark fell, the first snowflakes were coming down. He secured the barn and walked back to the house, which glowed with a warm, welcoming light. As he stamped the snow off his boots inside the door, he saw Martha and the children sitting near the stove. She was mending a shirt by lamplight. Sarah was practicing her letters on a slate, while Clara played with a little cornhusk doll. Thomas was fast asleep, leaning against his mother. They looked up when he came in, but with less fear this time. Martha gave him a small nod. "Supper is ready when you are," she said. "Just stew and biscuits. Sounds fine." He washed up and joined them. The stew was just what a man needed after a long day in the cold. This strange little family ate together while the winter storm howled outside. After supper, Martha tucked the children into bed. Ethan sat by the fire, reading an old newspaper and just listening to the sounds of a home. He could hear water being heated for dishes and the soft sound of Martha's footsteps. When she was done with the washing up, he lowered his paper. "They are settling in," he said. "Children bounce back quicker than grown-ups," she replied, scrubbing a pot. "They were scared you would send us away. I'm not in the habit of throwing women and children out into a blizzard." "Some men would have," she said, setting the clean pot down. "Some men would not have let us in to begin with." Ethan did not know what to say to that. After a while, Martha said, "I reckon I will turn in." Morning comes early. It does. At the door to her room, she paused. "Ethan, thank you for everything. You cooked and kept this house warm," he replied. "Seems I ought to be thanking you." A hint of a smile touched her eyes. "Then I suppose we are even." With that, she went into her room. Ethan sat by the fire for a bit longer, listening to the storm. He had been alone for 3 long years. In a single day, all that had changed. He should have felt uneasy. Instead, as he banked the fire and went up to his own cold room, he felt a deep sense of relief. The house had people in it again. Tomorrow would surely bring its own troubles, like gossip from town about the widow and her kids at Hollow Ridge. But for tonight, 5 souls slept warm and safe from the storm. And as he drifted off to sleep, Ethan figured that was more than enough. The next week passed with a surprising new rhythm. But on the 8th morning, Ethan woke up to a dead quiet. There was no smell of coffee, no sound from the stove. The kitchen was cold and Martha's door was still shut. He knocked softly. "Martha." After a moment, a weak voice answered, "Just a minute." When she opened the door, she looked awful. Her face was red with fever, her eyes were glassy, and she had to hold on to the doorframe to keep from falling. "I am so sorry," she rushed to say. "I will get breakfast started." "You need to get right back in that bed," Ethan said, taking her by the elbow as she swayed. "How long have you felt like this?" "It is just a cold." But her teeth were chattering. "The children need their mother, and you are about to collapse." He guided her firmly back to her bed, where her 3 little ones were huddled together. Sarah watched him with her big, serious eyes. "How are they?" "They are fine. It is just me," Martha insisted, trying to pull away. "I can still work." "Martha," he said, his voice firm enough to cut through her feverish haze, "get back in that bed. That is not a suggestion." She stared at him, a flicker of panic in her eyes, the kind of fear you feel when you know you cannot afford to be weak. Then all the fight went out of her and she slumped onto the bed. "I cannot be sick," she whispered. "You will send us away." Her words hit Ethan hard. He knelt down to look her in the eye. "I am not sending anyone away over a fever. You are sick. People get sick. You rest up, and we will be just fine until you are back on your feet." "But what about breakfast?" I have been making my own for 3 years now. I reckon I can manage for a few more days. He pulled the blankets up over her. Now you sleep. Those are my orders. You are not a doctor. No, but I am the one who pays you, so you have to listen, he said, trying to make her smile. Just consider it part of the deal. Her eyes finally closed. The children? I will watch them, Ethan promised. He turned to Sarah, who was still watching everything. Your mom is sick. I am going to need you and your brother and sister to help me today. Can you all do that? Sarah nodded, already climbing out of bed. What do we need to do? First thing, let your mama sleep. Come on now, let's get this kitchen warmed up and see about some food. He led the 3 children out of the room, closing the door softly behind him. Claire's small voice cut through the quiet. Is Mama going to die? No, Ethan said with a confidence he did not fully feel. She has a fever and just needs to rest. She will be better in a few days. Our papa got sick, Thomas mumbled. Then he died. Ethan stopped what he was doing at the stove. These children had learned too early that life was not fair. He leaned against the counter. I am sorry about your papa. That must have been awful hard. But your mama has a different kind of sick. It is just a winter cold, not the kind that takes people. You promise? Asked Claire, her eyes wide. Ethan knew that promises could be broken by the world, but these kids needed to hear one. I promise your mama is going to be fine. Sarah, the oldest, still looked doubtful, but she kept quiet. All right, Ethan said, turning back to the stove. Who knows how to make coffee? Sarah raised her hand. Mama taught me. Good. You are on coffee. Claire, you can set the table. Thomas, your job is to stay out of the way. Can you do that? The boy gave a solemn nod and settled on the floor by the stove, soaking up the heat. Making breakfast was a clumsy affair without Martha, but the kids pitched in better than Ethan expected. Sarah carefully measured the coffee grounds. Clara, moving slow but sure, put out the plates. Ethan even managed to fry up some bacon without turning it to charcoal. The eggs, well, they were a bit of a mess with broken yolks, but they were edible. They ate quietly, the children's worry for their mother hanging heavy in the air. Ethan found himself really looking at them, seeing things he had missed. Clara's little scar, Thomas's boot, worn clean through at the toe, Sarah's fingernails, bitten down to nothing. After they ate, he laid out the new rules. Sarah was to check on her mama every hour, sharp. Any change, she was to come get him right away. Clara would help him with the chickens, and Thomas was to stay inside in the warm. The morning passed in this new, strange rhythm. Clara scattered feed for the chickens, her breath turning to fog in the cold. She asked in her small voice, Mr. Cole, when Mama gets better, are we going to have to leave? He stopped his work. Why would you think that? 'Cause we're trouble, she said, like it was a fact. Papa always said we were more trouble than we were worth. Ethan turned and looked her square in the eye. Clara, you listen to me. Your papa was dead wrong. You are not trouble. He knelt down to her level. Y'all are children, and children need looking after. That ain't trouble, it's just how it is. Your mama works hard for you, and that makes you a family worth keeping around. Clara's eyes welled up, but she fought to hold the tears back. Mama says we're not supposed to cry. Well, Ethan said gently, your mama is wrong about that too. Crying is just feelings spilling out. A single tear escaped and traced a path down her cheek. I'm scared Mama's gonna die. She's not going to, he promised, handing her his handkerchief. You can keep this as long as you need it. When they came back inside, Sarah said Martha was still sleeping with a high fever, but her breathing was steady. Ethan tried his hand at making soup. It was warm and filling, but that was the best you could say about it. The children ate it without a word of complaint. It's not good like Mama's, Thomas finally declared, with the kind of honesty only a little kid has. Thomas, Sarah whispered. Ethan just smiled. The boy's right. Your mama is a much better cook. Later, while the kids were playing, Ethan went to check on Martha himself. She was deep asleep, her face flushed with fever. He felt her forehead. Hot, but not worryingly so. She looked so much younger and more fragile lying there. He noticed their old trunk in the corner. It was not locked. Inside, under some mended children's clothes and a Bible, he saw a bundle of letters tied with string. He did not touch them, but he felt like he had crossed a line just by looking. He quietly closed the trunk and left her to rest. The afternoon dragged on. Sarah kept checking on her mother, always with the same news. Still sleeping, still hot. That evening, Ethan came in to find the children huddled by Martha's door, whispering. Sarah looked up, her face a pale mask of worry. She's awake, but she's not right in the head. She keeps saying we have to hide, that someone's coming for us. Ethan went into the room. Martha was sitting bolt upright, her eyes wild. She did not seem to see him at all. "They'll find us," she said, her voice thin and full of fear. "I should have never stopped. He'll send someone." "Martha," Ethan said, his voice calm and low. "You are safe here. It is just the fever talking." She turned her gaze on him, but it was like she was looking straight through him. "You do not understand. The letters, I should not have kept them. He will know where to look." Ethan sat on the bed, taking her hot hands in his. "Promise me," she begged, like a little girl. "Promise they cannot find us here." "I promise," he said, and he meant it, even without knowing the whole story. "Now you lie back down and rest." She let him ease her back onto the pillow, but her fingers gripped his sleeve like a vice. "Do not let him take my children, please, no matter what happens to me." "Nobody is taking anybody," he said softly. "Sleep now." As her eyes closed, she whispered, "He hit them, Thomas the most. I tried to stop him, but I could not." "Martha, sleep," Ethan said gently but firmly. The fight finally went out of her, and she fell into a troubled sleep. When he walked out of the room, 3 pairs of worried eyes were fixed on him. He knelt down. "Your mama's going to be just fine. The fever is making her see things that are not there." "She said someone's coming," Sarah said, her voice flat. "That part is true, is not it?" Ethan looked at the girl's face, a face far too old for her years. "Is there someone who might be looking for y'all?" Sarah looked at her brother and sister, then back at him. "Mama told us we are not to talk about it. She said bad things happen if we do." "Sarah, I need you to tell me if you think danger is coming to my doorstep." The little girl's face was a battlefield. You could see she wanted to mind her mother, but was just plain scared. Finally, she spoke, her voice hardly a whisper. "Our daddy had a brother, Uncle James. After Daddy passed, Uncle James said we ought to come live with him. Mama told him no, that we were leaving town. He said he had rights to us, that family ought to stick together." She took a shaky breath. "He told Mama that if she ran, he would find us. He said blood is blood, and we belonged with him. And your Mama wanted no part of that." Sarah shook her head hard. "Uncle James was mean like Papa got when he was drinking. Mama heard him tell somebody he'd make her regret saying no, that he would teach her to be respectful." Her voice got even quieter. "The night we left, someone threw a rock through our window. It had a note on it. Mama burned it, but I saw the words, 'You cannot hide from family.'" A chill went through Ethan that had nothing to do with the winter air. "Does this uncle know where your aunt in Montana lives?" "I do not know. Maybe." Sarah looked just miserable. "Are we in trouble? Did we bring you trouble?" "No," Ethan said, his voice solid as an oak. "You did not bring trouble. It was already following you, but you are safe right here. I will not let anybody take you or your mother anywhere you do not want to go. You understand?" "How?" Clara's tiny voice asked. "Uncle James is big. He is bigger and meaner than you." "Well, I do not have to be bigger or meaner. I just have to be right here on my land, protecting the folks under my roof." Ethan stood a little straighter. "This here is my ranch. That makes y'all my responsibility, and I take care of what is mine." The children looked up at him, a mix of hope and worry in their eyes. Thomas, who had been quiet the whole time, suddenly left his sisters and just wrapped his little arms around Ethan's leg. "Do not let the bad man get us," he mumbled into the denim. Ethan felt something stir deep in his chest, a protective streak he had not felt in years. He scooped the boy up, surprised at how light he was, and looked at Sarah and Clara. "I will not. That is a promise." That night, sleep did not come easy for Ethan. He lay there in the cold, listening to the old house settle, thinking about that woman who ran across the country with 3 kids, all to get away from a man's twisted idea of family. He thought about those children who learned to be quiet so they would not set off the grown-ups who should have been keeping them safe. Around midnight, he heard a floorboard creak downstairs. He got up and went down to find Sarah in the kitchen, peeking in on her mother. "Could not sleep?" he asked softly. Sarah jumped, then shook her head. "I just wanted to make sure Mama was still breathing." "She is. I checked on her an hour ago." Ethan went to the stove and stirred the coals. "Since we are both up, how about some warm milk?" "We do not have any milk." "We sure do. I have got 2 cows in the barn. Been too lazy to milk them right. But I know how." He got the milk from the pantry and warmed it on the stove, adding a little bit of honey. Sarah sat at the table, her serious eyes watching his every move. "You really will not let Uncle James take us?" "I really will not, even though we are not your kin." Ethan poured the milk into 2 cups and sat with her. "Sarah, family is not always about blood. Sometimes it is about the folks who show up for you, or the folks you decide to protect. Your mama chose to come here, and I chose to let you all stay. That makes us something, even if there is no name for it yet." Sarah cupped her hands around the warm mug. "Back home, Papa always said blood was the only thing that mattered. That family meant you did what you were told or you paid for it. Sounds like your papa was wrong about a few things." "Are you married, Mr. Cole?" The question surprised him. "I was, a long time ago." "What happened to her?" "She died. A fever like your mama has. Only worse." This was before I moved to Wyoming. The words came out easier than he expected. "Her name was Elizabeth. We were only married 2 years. Did you love her?" "I did. Do you still?" Ethan thought about it, her face now more a feeling than a clear picture. "I will always care for the woman she was, but the sharp pain of losing her, that has faded. Time has a way of making even the biggest hurts get smaller." "How long does it take?" "Well, that depends on the hurt and the person, but it happens if you let it." Sarah sipped her milk, looking thoughtful. "Mama cried when Papa died, but it was not a sad cry. It was more like she was scared and relieved all at once." "Does that make her a bad person?" "No." Ethan's voice was firm. "That just makes her honest. Not every death is a tragedy, Sarah. Sometimes it is just the end of something that should have ended long before." The girl nodded slowly, taking it all in. They finished their milk without saying much more. Ethan sent her back to bed, telling her to wake him if her mother's condition changed. He stayed by the fire a while longer, thinking about the little family asleep upstairs. 3 kids who knew fear better than they knew safety. A mother who chose a desperate run over staying put. And somewhere out there, a man who thought blood gave him ownership of people. Let him come, Ethan thought. Let him just try. Hollow Ridge was isolated, a good place to defend. He had learned long ago that some fights were not about winning. They were about making the cost of the fight higher than the other fellow was willing to pay. He went back to his room as the first light touched the windows. Tomorrow he would check their supplies. They would need to be ready to ride out a long winter. He had to keep Martha's fever down and the children fed and warm. For now, though, they were safe. The house was warm, and the doors were locked. Anyone wanting to harm the people in his house would have to get through him first. And that was a comfort. Morning came with a deep quiet that meant a heavy snow had fallen. Ethan woke up to a world covered in white. It was beautiful, but it was the kind of snow that could trap a man for weeks. He dressed and went downstairs. Sarah was already in the kitchen, standing guard at her mother's door. "How is she?" "The fever broke about an hour ago," she said with relief in her voice. "She is sleeping peaceful now." Ethan felt a weight lift off his own shoulders. "That is good news. Real good." He stoked the fire. "Did you get any sleep?" "A little." Sarah rubbed her eyes. "Clara wet the bed. She has not done that since we left Ohio. I reckon she is more scared than she lets on. Being scared is nothing to be ashamed of." Ethan started the coffee, the motions automatic now. "Where is Clara?" "Back asleep with Thomas. They are both worn out." Sarah went to the window and looked out at the deep snow. "That is a lot of white. 2 feet, I would guess. Maybe more." "We are snowed in for a spell." Ethan joined her. "It is a good thing your mama got here when she did. Another day or two and this road would have been closed." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Do you think Uncle James knows where we are?" "I do not know. But even if he does, he cannot get through this. Nobody can. It buys us some time." The girl nodded, still watching the snow fall. "Mama says running away is for cowards. She says good people stand their ground." "Well, your mama is wrong about that too." Ethan's voice was gentle but steady. "Sometimes running is the bravest thing a person can do, especially when staying means letting someone hurt you or your kids. That is not being a coward. That is just surviving. Uncle James would say we are his blood, that we owe him. Blood does not give anyone the right to hurt you, and loyalty, well, that is a two-way street. It has to be earned." Ethan turned to her. "Sarah, I need you to listen. Whatever your mama told you about shame or running, she was just trying to protect you the only way she knew. But you do not owe that man a single thing. Not you, not your brother and sister, and not your mama. Do you understand me?" Sarah looked at his face for a long time, then gave a small nod. "I will try to. That is all anyone can ask." They made breakfast together, Sarah getting the hang of making coffee. The next morning, Martha finally woke up, and her head was clear. Ethan gave her and Sarah some time alone before Sarah came out and said, "Mama wants to see you." He found Martha propped up on pillows. She looked worn out, but her eyes were sharp. "I am sorry," she said right away, "for all this trouble." "Stop that," Ethan said, pulling a chair to her bedside. "You were sick. It happens." Her hands worried the blanket. "Sarah said I was talking about things I should not have. You were delirious with fever." "But you heard," she said, looking him straight in the eye, "about my husband, about why we really left." Ethan took a moment. "Sarah told me a little about your husband's brother. Said he wanted to take y'all back." Martha's face lost all its color. "She should not have. I told them to never ever speak his name." Ethan's voice was steady but firm. "Martha, I need to know if someone is out there looking for you. This is my ranch. I won't be caught by surprise, so I'm asking you to tell me the truth." "Just send us away then," she said, her voice flat. "We'll leave the second the snow melts. I won't bring any trouble here." "I am not sending you anywhere," he repeated. "I am asking you to trust me." She looked away, her jaw set tight as a drum. After a long, quiet spell, she finally started to talk. "My husband's name was Daniel. I was 17 when we married, and he was 22. My folks thought he was a fine match with his steady job and good family name. It all seemed right. But it was not. He was all charm and kindness when he was courting me. That changed right after the wedding. It started small, with him finding fault in how I kept the house or cooked a meal. Then his temper got worse. He would break things, shove me. It was not long before the shoving turned into hitting. Ethan felt his knuckles go white and forced his hands to relax. I thought of leaving, but I had nowhere to go. My parents were gone by then. I had no money of my own, and then the children came. Sarah, then Clara, and little Thomas. Every child made it harder to run. Her hands were shaking, but her voice stayed even. I tried to tell myself it was not so bad, that other women had it worse. I thought if I just tried harder, he would change. He never did. He just got smarter about where he left the bruises. The children learned to be quiet, to make themselves small when he was drinking. Sarah got real good at reading his moods and keeping the others safe. What happened 4 months ago? Martha gave a short, bitter laugh. He took a fall at the mill, 3 stories down onto the hard ground. The foreman called it a terrible accident, but I knew better. He had been drinking. It was just a matter of time. And his brother James, she said, her voice turning cold. James was worse than Daniel. Meaner. Daniel hit you when he was mad. James hit you because he liked it. After the funeral, James came around saying he had a right to Daniel's family. He said I was too weak to raise the children alone and that he meant to marry me. He wanted to own us, Martha whispered, her hands twisting in the blanket. I told him no. He said the law was on his side. When I kept refusing, he started threatening me, throwing rocks through our windows. So you ran. We left in the dead of night with what little we could carry. My aunt in Montana wrote that there was work out west, and I figured if we could just get there, we would be safe. Did you tell her about James? She shook her head. I was too ashamed. Ashamed I stayed so long. Ashamed of what my children had been through. I just wanted a fresh start. And then the winter storm caught you. It caught us. And then I saw your notice for a housekeeper. I thought maybe we had finally found a safe place. Her eyes begged him to understand. But I have put you in harm's way. If he tracked us this far, let him come. Ethan's voice was hard as iron. This is my land. You are under my roof. That means something out here. You do not get it. James does not care about what is right. He just takes what he wants. Then he is about to learn that some folks hit back, Ethan said, leaning forward. Martha, I have been alone for 3 years because it was just easier. But you and those kids showed up needing a hand, and I gave it. That does not change just because things got complicated. But why, she asked. Why risk yourself for us? Why would you take such a risk for us? Ethan thought about his own wife, Elizabeth, and the empty house he came home to. He thought about the loneliness he chose because it felt safer. He looked at this woman with so much courage and her 3 frightened children. Because nobody should have to be alone in this world, he said. And those children deserve better than a life of running scared. If I can give them one safe winter, then it means something. Tears filled Martha's eyes. I do not know how to repay you. You already are. You are cooking and caring for your family and keeping this house from feeling empty. That is more than enough. Now get some rest. We will worry about James if he ever shows up. And if he does, we will face him together. He went to the door, then stopped. And one more thing. Stop telling your children that running was something to be ashamed of. What you did to protect them took more courage than most folks will ever know. They should know that about their mother. He left before she could say more. In the kitchen, the children watched him. Mama is going to be fine, he told them. She just needs rest. Sarah, you think you can make some soup? Clara Thomas, you can help her. I need to see to the stock before this snow piles up any higher. The world outside was quiet and strange, buried under the thickest snowfall Ethan had seen in years. He trudged toward the barn, each step a struggle through the deep powder. The animals were restless inside, safe from the cold but weary of being cooped up. As he worked, checking their food and water, his mind turned to Martha's story. A husband's cruelty, a brother-in-law's wicked claim, and a mother's desperate flight. He had spent 3 years avoiding this kind of trouble. Now he was right in the middle of it, planning to defend a family he barely knew. He ought to feel cornered. Instead, for the first time in a long while, he felt like he had a purpose. The storm kept them snowbound for 3 long days. The world shrank to the warmth of the ranch house and the faint outline of the barn. A new routine took hold. Martha, still healing, gave orders from her bed. Sarah showed a knack for cooking simple, hearty meals. Clara helped with the mending. Even 4-year-old Thomas had his chores, fetching firewood and keeping the water bucket full. Ethan stayed indoors more than usual, carving little figures from wood and reading adventure stories aloud to the children. Their quiet focus and rare smiles warmed the room. On the third evening, as the snow finally stopped, Martha came out of her room. She looked pale but steady, taking in the scene of Ethan reading to her children by the lamplight. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft, "for keeping them safe." Ethan looked up. "They're good kids. Made it easy." "They like you," she said, easing into a chair. "That's not common for them." "I can't imagine why," Ethan said dryly. A small smile touched Martha's lips. "Sarah told me what you said, about running not being a coward's way. I needed to hear that too." "I meant it," he said, closing his book. "You did the best you could. That's all any of us can do." "Is it enough?" she asked, her gaze on her children. "We'll know in 20 years, I reckon, when they're grown." A real smile, tired but genuine, appeared on her face. "You're a good man, Ethan Cole." He just nodded, unsure what to say to that, and felt a warmth spread in his chest that was dangerously close to feeling like home. Later, after the children were asleep, they sat with coffee at the kitchen table. "What's your plan for the spring?" he asked. She shook her head. "I don't know. The wagon's done for, and I can't stay here forever. You hired me for the winter." "Maybe," Ethan said, meeting her eyes. "Or maybe I'll find I like the company." "You're offering us a place to stay." "I'm saying let's not worry about spring while we're still digging out from winter. One season at a time, Martha." Relief softened her face as she nodded. One season at a time. The next morning dawned clear and painfully cold. Ethan was up before the sun, digging paths from the house to the barn and the woodpile. His breath plumed in the frigid air, the hard work feeling good and necessary. As he carried an armload of firewood back inside, he saw them. Tracks in the snow. They came from the direction of the road, leading straight to the barn. They were boot prints, not from an animal. Someone had been there in the dead of night, scouting the property. A cold dread settled in his stomach. He dropped the wood and followed the prints, his hand resting on the pistol at his hip. The tracks circled the barn, then the house, before heading back toward the road. They had been watched from several directions before heading back to the road. Someone had been casing the place, figuring out the lay of the land, and looking for a way in. The tracks were old, partly covered by snow, but you could still see them. They were made during the storm, which meant whoever it was traveled in weather that could kill a man. That was a determined person. Someone who wouldn't be stopped by a little blizzard. Ethan followed the prints to the tree line, where they disappeared into the pines. He stood there a long while, scanning the quiet woods, but that feeling of being watched just crawled right up his spine. When he got back to the house, Martha took one look at his face and went white as a sheet. "What is it?" she asked. "Someone was out here," he told her. "Just looking, far as I can tell. But it is him." Martha's voice was heavy with certainty. "It is James. He has found us. You cannot know that for sure." "I know," she said. She walked to the window and stared out at all that white. "I know because I have been waiting for this. Men like James do not let go of what they believe is theirs." Ethan saw how stiff she was standing, trying to wrestle down her fear. "Even if it is him, he cannot do anything. Not with all this snow, not on my land. The law does not matter to him," Martha said, turning from the window. "You need to send us away before he comes back. Before one of y'all gets hurt because of us." "No," Ethan said firmly. "No. We are not making choices out of fear. Somebody was here, yes, but we do not know who or why. And even if it was this James, and he does come back, it does not change a thing. You are staying. The children are staying. And if he shows his face, we will handle it then. You do not understand what that man can do." "Then help me understand," Ethan said, stepping closer. "Because right now all I see is a woman so used to running she cannot imagine that standing her ground might be the better choice." Martha just stared at him, anger and fear battling it out on her face. "You think I'm a coward? I think you are scared to death. There is a big difference." His voice got a little softer. "But you are not alone anymore, Martha. That changes things. Does it? Or does it just mean more people will get hurt when he finally comes? That is my risk to take. This is my home. It is my choice." Ethan held her gaze. "I am not letting him run you off my land. Not without a fight. And if fighting him gets me killed, at least I will die for something that matters. I have been hiding up here for 3 years, Martha. Hiding from grief and from anyone who might get close. You think I do not know about running? I have been running in place since the day Elizabeth died." Martha's face changed, surprise pushing away some of the fear. "That is different. You lost somebody you loved. You lost years to a man who hurt you. You lost your home, your safety, maybe even yourself. Do not tell me that is not a grief worth running from." He took a steadying breath. "But after a while, running stops being about escape. It just becomes all you know how to do. I am done running. The question is, are you?" The kitchen was quiet except for the fire crackling in the stove. They could hear the children waking up, making the normal sounds of a new day. Life just keeps on going, even when you are scared. Finally, Martha spoke, her voice just a whisper. "I do not know how to stop." "Neither do I," he said. "But maybe we can figure it out together." She gave a slow nod, tears running down her face. "If James comes and you are hurt because of us, I will never forgive myself. Then we will just have to make sure that does not happen." Ethan went to the door. "I am going to take a closer look at those tracks. See if I can tell which way he went. You keep the children inside today. Do not let them out of your sight. Do you understand?" "Yes." "And Martha, load that rifle behind the door, just in case." Her eyes got wide. "I do not know how to shoot a gun. Sarah probably does. If her daddy hunted, he would have taught his oldest how to handle one." He put on his coat. "You ask her. And if anybody you do not know comes to this house, you do not open that door, you hear me?" Martha nodded, fear still in her eyes, but a little bit of steel, too. "Be careful." For a couple of hours, Ethan followed those footprints, reading the story they left behind. The man who made them was tall, with a stride longer than his own, and heavy, judging by the deep prints in the snow. He'd come from the east, straight up the valley road in a blizzard. That took a special kind of grit, or maybe just plain desperation. Ethan tracked him until the trail vanished into the trees, then stood dead still, listening. He felt eyes on him, but all he heard was the wind. Back at the house, he found Sarah showing her mother how to handle the old Winchester. Seeing that 9-year-old girl so comfortable with a rifle made his blood boil. A father should teach his daughter to feel safe, not just how to shoot. He startled them both when he spoke. "Good. You all keep that handy." The rest of the day was quiet but tight as a guitar string. Ethan stayed close, the kids played inside, and Martha moved like a machine, her eyes always checking the windows. The sun went down without any trouble. Ethan walked the property one last time in the dark, looking for anything new. He found nothing, but that didn't settle his mind. Just because you can't see a snake doesn't mean it ain't there. That night, instead of heading upstairs, he laid a bedroll by the stove where he could see both doors. Martha didn't say a word, just nodded like she understood, and took her children to their room. But before she shut the door, she looked right at him. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "for not running." Then she was gone, leaving Ethan in the dark with his thoughts and the Winchester across his lap. He figured some folks are worth fighting for, and after years of hiding from the world, he was ready for a fight. Whatever the morning brought, everyone in that house was safe tonight. That had to count for something. The stranger showed up 3 days later. The sun was high and bright, making you forget how cold it was. Ethan was out back splitting firewood when he heard the slow, steady clump of a horse coming up the snowed-in road. He put down the axe and slipped to a spot where he could watch unseen. It was one rider on a big bay horse. The fellow was large, wearing a heavy coat and a low-brimmed hat. The way he sat, that horse, you could tell he thought he owned the whole world. Ethan's stomach clenched. He cut back to the house through the barn. One look at his face and Martha went pale as a sheet. "Someone's here. Get inside with the children and lock this door behind me." He grabbed the Winchester. "I mean it, Martha. No matter what happens, you keep that door locked." She just nodded, already gathering her kids. Ethan stepped outside, pulling the door shut until he heard the bolt slide home. The rider was in the yard, his horse stopped about 20 feet from the porch. Up close, he was even bigger, maybe 6'3", built like a bull. His eyes were a cold, pale blue that scanned the property like he was adding up what it was worth. "Can I help you?" Ethan's voice was steady, the rifle held loose but ready. "I'm looking for my family," the man said, his voice smooth in a way that felt all wrong. "My brother's widow, Martha Hale, and her 3 children. You happen to see them?" "Can't say that I have," Ethan said from the porch. "This is private land. You ought to state your business or ride on." The man offered a smile that was all teeth. "Private land, you say? Funny, I know for a fact my sister-in-law was headed this way." "Then maybe she kept right on going," Ethan replied. The man's cold eyes locked onto him. "Or maybe she's right here. Maybe some fella thought he was helping her out, not knowing she was running from her duty to family." Ethan let that hang in the air. "Is that what you call it? Family duty?" A flicker of anger crossed the man's face. "I call it taking care of my own. My brother left a wife and 3 kids. It falls on me to provide for them." He swung down from his horse. He moved easy for a big man, taking a step closer. "So I'm going to ask you one more time, real friendly-like. Have you seen Martha Hale and her children?" Ethan brought the rifle up just a bit, making sure the man saw it. "And I'm going to tell you one more time, this is my land. Anyone here is here because I invited them, and I don't remember sending you an invitation." The man's fake smile turned mean. "You're making a big mistake, friend. This is family business you don't want no part of." "I'm already a part of it. The second your horse stepped on my property." "Is that right?" The stranger, James Hale, took another step. "Maybe Martha mentioned me. Her husband's brother. The one who has legal rights to those kids. The one who can make a whole heap of trouble for a man hiding them." "Legal rights?" Ethan's voice went hard and flat. "Last I heard, a woman doesn't lose her kids to her brother-in-law just because her husband's gone." "A woman alone can't raise 3 children right," James sneered. "They need a man's firm hand. A judge would see it my way." "You can argue all you want," Ethan said. "Doesn't make it the truth." "Truth is whatever people believe," James said, stopping about 10 feet away. "And I believe my sister-in-law is scared and confused. I believe she's being hidden by someone who doesn't understand the trouble he's in." "Well, let me tell you what I understand." Ethan's voice was calm but full of iron. "You're on my land making threats. You can turn that horse around and ride out the way you came, or you can push your luck and see how far those legal rights get you out here." James just stared at him for a long moment, then let out a harsh laugh. "You're either brave or a fool. Haven't decided which. Don't much care so long as you decide to leave." "Oh, I'm leaving, for now." James turned slowly and swung back onto his horse. "But this ain't over. Those kids are my blood, and I always collect what's mine." He pulled the reins, but before he left, he looked back at the house, his eyes lingering on the windows. "You tell Martha I'll be back. You tell her family always finds family. I can wait out a winter." But when spring comes and these roads clear up, he gave that cold smile again. "Well, we will see how brave her protector is when he does not have snow for a wall. I will tell her you came by and that you are not welcome here again." James's eyes went hard. "You are making an enemy you do not want, friend. Better that than being the kind of man who lets a bully take what is not his." For a second, something ugly and dangerous flashed in James's face. He was holding back a rage that was just barely under control. Then he tipped his hat in a mocking way and turned his horse. "I will see you in the spring, friend. We can finish this talk then." He rode off slow and deliberate, making it clear he was leaving because he chose to. Ethan watched until he was gone, and then waited even longer just to be sure. Only then did he head back to the house. The door flew open before he got there. Martha was standing with the rifle in her hands, pure terror on her face. Was it him? It was him, Ethan said, stepping inside and bolting the door. The children were huddled by the stove, Sarah holding the little ones close. All three of them had eyes as big as saucers. What did he say? Martha's voice was shaking. What did he want? He wanted me to tell you he knows where you are. He said he will wait until spring. He said he always collects what is his. Ethan put his own rifle down and turned to her. He thinks those children are his property. He thinks you owe him something just because of blood. He will be back. It was not a question. When the snow melts, he will come back with the law, or with hired men to take us. Let him try. Ethan, you do not get it. James does not make threats he cannot keep. If he says he will be here in the spring, he will be. And he will bring enough muscle to make sure he wins. Then we will be ready for him. Ethan moved to the stove, needing to do something with his hands. But that is months from now. A lot can happen in a few months. Like what? Martha's laugh was bitter. The winter ends, spring comes, and we are right back where we started, either running or fighting a battle we are bound to lose. Ethan looked at the children, at their scared faces. He looked at Martha, her knuckles white around that rifle. He looked at his warm kitchen, which had started to feel like a real home again. Or, he said, we make sure that when spring gets here, you are not as helpless as James thinks you are. Martha just stared at him. What are you trying to say? I am saying we use this winter. We get ready, we make a plan, and we make darn sure that if James comes back, he finds something completely different from what he expects. How? Ethan was quiet for a minute. An idea was forming that was either the smartest or the craziest thing he had ever thought of. By making sure his legal claim will not hold up in court, by making sure you are not some helpless widow he can push around. I do not understand. Marry me. The words just dropped into the quiet kitchen. Martha's mouth fell open. The children just stared. It felt like even the fire held its breath. What? Marry me, Ethan said again, more steady this time. James's whole case is that you are an unfit mother, a woman alone who cannot take care of 3 kids. But if you are married to a man who owns land and has a good home, his whole argument just falls apart. You would not be alone. The children would have a father. Everything he plans to use against you would be worthless. You cannot be serious. I am dead serious. He stepped closer to her. Look, I know this is not about romance. It is not what either of us would choose, but it fixes the problem. It gives you legal protection. It makes the children legally mine, too, which means James cannot touch them. And it is a whole lot harder to call a married woman unstable than it is a widow on the run. Martha just shook her head slowly. You cannot want to marry me. You do not even know me. I know you are a good mother. I know you are brave enough to leave everything behind to protect your kids. I know you work hard and you make a fine cup of coffee. He tried to make a little joke. I know that since you have been here, this house has felt more like a home than it has in years. That has to count for something. And what about you? What do you get out of this deal besides a whole heap of trouble? A man like James and 3 little ones that ain't even mine? Well, I reckon I get to not be so alone anymore. I get to help folks who need it, and I get to stand up to a bully who thinks he owns people. Ethan held her gaze firm. That's more than enough for me. Martha looked over at her children. Sarah was watching with a smart, sharp look in her eyes. Clara seemed hopeful but confused. And Thomas just had that simple trust that only the real little ones have. I won't let you get trapped in this. You can't sacrifice yourself for us. It's no sacrifice. I'm making a choice. It's a practical choice that just so happens to help everybody. His voice got softer. Martha, I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not even asking you to put on a show. I'm just asking you to let me help. Think of it as a partnership, not charity. You run the house, cook, and mind the children. I'll keep this ranch going and give you all a roof and protection. We face James together as a team instead of you standing all by yourself. The children ought to have a say in this. Ethan turned to them. Sarah, Clara, Thomas, your mama and I are talking about getting married. Not the love story kind, but the kind that would keep you safe. The kind that would stop that man from taking you away. What do y'all think about that? Sarah spoke up first, her voice quiet but sure. Would we get to stay here, even when winter's over? If that's what you wanted, then yes. And the bad man, Uncle James, he couldn't make us leave with him. He'd have a much harder time of it. I'd be your legal stepfather. That gives me the right to protect you. Clara chirped up then. Would you be our papa? Ethan felt a knot tighten in his chest. I'd be your stepfather. It's a little different. Your real papa. He'll always be your real papa no matter what. I'd just be, well, someone else who cares for you, if you'd have me. Thomas, who almost never spoke, shocked them all. Will you be mean, like Papa was? The question just hung there in the quiet room, heavy with bad memories. Ethan knelt down to the boy's level. No, Thomas, I give you my word. I get mad sometimes, and I'm not always the most patient man. But I will never, ever lay a hand on you, or your sisters, or your mama. That is a promise I will keep till the day I die. The boy looked deep into his eyes, then gave a slow, serious nod. Okay. Clara looked at her mother. Mama, can we please stay? A tear traced a path down Martha's cheek. I don't know, baby. Mr. Cole is offering something mighty big. I need to think on it. What's to think about? Sarah's voice was sharp. We stay here, we're safe. We stay here. We leave and Uncle James will find us. Seems real simple to me. Sarah stopped. No, Mama, you're the one always saying we gotta be practical. Well, this is practical. The girl looked straight at Ethan. You really mean it? You'd marry Mama just to help us? I really do. And you wouldn't, expect her to. Sarah's face flushed a bit. Adult worries coming from a little girl. You wouldn't expect the things a husband normally expects. Ethan knew exactly what she was asking. This would be a marriage on paper, and that's all. Your mama would have her own room. I'd have mine. Nothing would change except you'd have the law on your side. You have my word. Sarah looked at her mother. Then I think we should say yes. You are 9 years old. You don't get to make this choice. But you do. And you're going to say no because you think you're asking too much. Or you're too scared of owing someone. Or you think we're not worth the trouble. Sarah's voice cracked. But we are worth it, Mama. You are. And if Mr. Cole is offering a hand, maybe we ought to take it instead of being too proud and ending up right back where we started. Martha just stared at her daughter, a mix of surprise and pride on her face. Then she turned to Ethan, really looking at him, trying to find the truth in his eyes. Why are you really doing this? Ethan thought on it for a moment. Because I'm tired of being only half alive. Because you and these kids reminded me what it feels like to be needed by someone. And because when James rode up to my home threatening people I was protecting, something inside me that's been asleep for 3 years woke right up. Something that says some things are worth fighting for, even if they're not yours by blood. We'd just be another burden for you. Or you'd be a reason to get up in the morning that's about more than just making it through another day. He stepped a little closer. Martha, I'm not saying it'll be easy. I'm not promising a perfect life or that we won't get on each other's nerves. But I am promising that if you say yes, you will never face James by yourself again. You'll never have to run. And those children will have a safe, steady home for as long as they need one. Martha looked at her children, at their faces full of hope and fear. She looked at the warm kitchen, at this house that had been a safe harbor. Then she looked at Ethan, this quiet man who took them in when he had every reason not to. If we do this, she said, her voice slow and steady, we do it proper, legal, with a preacher and papers. I won't have James trying to say it's not real. Agreed. And you won't expect me to be a wife in all the ways that word means? I expect you to be yourself. That's all. Ethan's voice was gentle. We'll figure out the rest as we go. And if you ever meet someone else, someone you could truly love, well, we'll cross that bridge if we come to it. But Martha, I'm 34 years old. I've loved and I've lost once before. I'm not exactly waiting for lightning to strike twice. She was quiet for a long, long time. Then she gave one sharp, final nod. All right, then. Yes, I'll marry you for the children's safety. But I need you to know I may not ever love you like a wife is supposed to. But I already respect you. I already care about what happens to you and your children. Maybe that's a good enough place to start. Martha wiped her eyes and asked, when? Ethan told her, as soon as this storm lets up and the roads are clear enough for a horse. He would either bring the preacher up to the house or they would all ride down to town. Either way, it had to be done before spring, before James could make his move. Sarah stepped up then, her eyes serious. Thank you, Mr. Cole, for helping us. Ethan smiled. You can call me Ethan now. Whatever feels right to you. The girl nodded slowly. Ethan, then. Clara and Thomas came closer too, and Ethan was suddenly surrounded by three little ones who smelled of soap and hope. From across the room, Martha watched them, her face hard to read. I will hold you to those promises, she said softly. About not hitting, about keeping us safe, about being a better man. Ethan met her gaze. Good. And if I ever break my word, you take that rifle and you run as far as you can. A small, real smile finally touched Martha's lips. Deal. A contract. But right in the middle of talking about crops, Martha's hand reached out and rested on his. It was a brief touch, a silent acknowledgement of trust. Then she pulled back and went to her room without a word. That single touch spoke volumes. It said she was willing to take a chance. It said she believed him, at least enough for this. It said that maybe, just maybe, they could build something real out of this strange bargain. Ethan sat there in the dark for a long time, just listening to the old house creak. 5 people under one roof, tied together by a promise. James would be back in the spring, he knew that for a fact. But he wouldn't find a scared widow and her helpless kids. He'd find a family, a strange family born out of hard times, but a family all the same. Outside, the stars shone bright in the cold, clear sky. Inside, the fire kept a steady warmth. And for the first time in a long while, Ethan Cole felt like he was building a future instead of just running from his past. It wasn't love, not by a long shot, but it was solid and real, and it was something worth fighting for. The wedding took place on a Tuesday in late January. Ethan had already ridden down to Hollow Ridge to get Reverend Michaels and the proper papers. The Reverend was a practical man who'd spent 20 years in the territory and didn't ask too many questions. When Ethan laid out the whole story, a widow with 3 kids needing protection, the preacher just nodded. He said he had seen stranger deals work out better than true love matches. So there they stood in the kitchen with Sarah, Clara, and Thomas as their witnesses. The Reverend's voice filled the small room with words of commitment. Martha wore her best dress, a faded blue one, and Ethan had put on a clean shirt. It was a simple affair, but it was honest. Do you, Ethan Cole, take Martha Hale to be your lawfully wedded wife? Ethan looked at Martha, at her serious face and her questioning eyes. He thought about how crazy this was, and how it was the only thing that made any sense. I do. And do you, Martha Hale, take Ethan Cole to be your lawfully wedded husband? Martha's voice was quiet but firm. I do. Then I pronounce you husband and wife, the Reverend said, closing his Bible. You can kiss your bride now. They looked at each other, both a little awkward about it. Then Martha stepped forward and gave him a quick, shy kiss on the cheek. Thank you, she whispered so low only he could hear. For this chance. Just don't make me regret it, he answered, trying to sound light-hearted, but his voice came out more sincere than he expected. The children clapped. The Reverend poured them all a small drink of whiskey he'd brought, adding cider for the kids. They toasted to new starts and the end of winter. After the Reverend left, the new family stood in an awkward silence. They were legally a family now, but nothing felt different. Well, Martha finally broke the silence, I suppose I ought to make some dinner. The kids chimed in to help, and soon the kitchen was filled with the normal sounds of preparing a meal. The strangeness of the day started to fade. Ethan watched them, feeling a quiet sense of peace settle over him. Sarah came and stood by him at the window. Are you scared? She asked him quietly. About Uncle James coming back? A little, Ethan admitted. But mostly I'm just set on what needs to be done. There's a difference. What if he brings papers, saying he has rights to us? Then we'll show him our papers, Ethan said, looking down at her. We'll show them you have a home, a mother, and now a stepfather to provide for you. The law is meant to protect children, Sarah, not hurt them. We'll fight him with papers first. And if that doesn't work, we'll figure out something else. That's what families do. Sarah looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. I'm glad Mama married you, even if it's not for real. Oh, it's real, Ethan corrected her gently. It's just different. And for what it's worth, I'm glad too. Y'all are good kids, worth protecting. The girl's eyes welled up with tears, but she blinked them back. Our papa never said things like that. Ethan's voice was low. Then your papa was a fool. That night, Martha knocked on his door. He had moved his things back upstairs after the ceremony. I just wanted to be clear on things, she said, sitting in the chair by the window. You said this marriage was in name only. I need to know you meant that. Ethan leaned against the dresser. Martha, that's not going to change. This marriage gives you legal protection and gives me the right to defend you and the children. That is all. Your room is your own. Your choices are your own. Nothing has changed except what we show the world. What folks think, well, let them think. What goes on inside this house is our business and nobody else's. She nodded, and some of the tightness left her shoulders. I know I'm not what you would have chosen in a real marriage. We just play the hand we're dealt. He sat down in the other chair. For what it's worth, if I had to pick someone to face down a hard winter and a whole mess of trouble with, I'd pick someone just like you, practical, brave, and you make a fine cup of coffee. That's a solid start for anything. A small smile touched Martha's lips. You must have mighty low standards if good coffee is that important. You've never had to drink my coffee. Good coffee is a blessing. She let out a short, surprised laugh. Then she got serious again. When spring gets here and James comes back, it's going to get ugly. You know that. He won't just give up. He will fight and he will scheme to get us. Then we'll just have to fight harder and scheme smarter. We'll make it real clear to him that some fights ain't worth the trouble. Ethan held her gaze. I meant every word, Martha. Those children are under my protection now by law and by my own choice. James will have to come through me to get to them, and I promise you, I don't plan on making it easy for him. You could get hurt. He's a dangerous man when he's crossed. So am I. He just hasn't found that out yet. Martha looked at his face and saw something there that made her nod. All right. Then we get ready. We make sure we're prepared for him when he shows up. Exactly. She stood up to go, but stopped at the door. Ethan, thank you for being the kind of man we can trust. He just nodded. And thank you for letting me be part of something again. After she was gone, Ethan sat there in the dark. He thought about the strange new family he now had, and the storm that was gathering out past the snow. He should have felt trapped. Instead, for the first time in years, he felt like he had a purpose again. The weeks that followed found a new rhythm. Ethan and Martha learned to work around each other, finding their way through the little daily things that come with a shared roof. The children started to relax. Their laughter came easier, and they didn't walk around so jumpy anymore. Sarah started helping Ethan with the ranch chores and was stronger than she looked. Clara stuck to Martha's side in the kitchen, learning how to cook. And little Thomas just soaked up the quiet of a house that wasn't loud and angry anymore. February came in with a bitter cold snap. The snow was deep on the ground, making the whole world look still and white. Ethan used the time to teach the children things they'd need to know. How to read the sky for a change in the weather, how to handle the animals, and how to be steady in a storm. To shoot straight. "Why do we need to know this?" Clara asked one day as she learned to load the Winchester. "Because knowing how to do things for yourself is freedom," Ethan told her. "If something happens and I'm not here or your mama needs you, y'all have to be able to stand on your own." Is something going to happen? I sure hope not. But hope isn't a plan. We plan for the worst and hope for the best. Martha watched these lessons with a mix of pride and fear, but she never interfered. One night in late February, she finally asked what was on her mind. "What if James doesn't come back? What if he decides we're not worth the trouble?" "Do you believe that?" Ethan asked. She was quiet for a long moment. "No. James never gives up." "Then we keep preparing," he said. "Better to be ready for nothing than caught unprepared. After, what happens then? Do we just go on like this?" "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "Maybe this arrangement becomes something real. Or maybe we just stay partners. We've got respect and a shared purpose. That's more than many folks start with." March brought more storms, but there were hints of a change underneath. The sun had a little warmth to it some days, and the nights weren't quite so bitter. Winter was losing its grip. As the snow began to melt, the tension in the house grew thicker. They all felt it. The thaw meant the roads would soon be clear. It meant James could finally reach them. Ethan checked his ammunition and reinforced the weak spots around the property. Martha went over stories with the children, making sure they knew what to say. Sarah practiced with the rifle until, for a 9-year-old, she was scarily accurate. The confrontation finally arrived in the middle of April, when the last of the snow had melted from the valley floor. Ethan was in the barn when he heard the horses. The sound of more than one set his teeth on edge. He grabbed his Winchester and peered outside. 3 riders. James Hale sat out front, looking bigger and meaner than Ethan remembered. Behind him were 2 fellas with hard faces and guns worn high and ready. They rode into the yard like they owned the place. Ethan stepped out of the barn, rifle in hand. He saw Martha appear in the doorway of the house, holding her own rifle. They had prepared for this, but nothing feels like the real thing. "You again," James said, his voice dripping with false friendliness. "I told you I would be back." "And I told you that you were not welcome," Ethan replied. "Well, things have changed," James said, motioning to his men. "I have witnesses this time and legal papers." He pulled a document from his coat. "Signed by a judge. It grants me custody of my brother's children. Says here their mother is unfit." "Well, that is interesting," Ethan said, his voice steady. "Because I have papers, too. A marriage certificate signed and witnessed. And legal adoption papers for all 3 kids, which makes them mine as much as they are Martha's. Your claim just got real complicated." James's smile vanished. "You married her? You took my nieces and nephew as your own?" His voice turned cold and quiet. "That was a foolish move." "Was it?" Ethan countered. "From where I am standing, this is now a custody battle. A mother and a legal stepfather against an uncle. How do you think that will play out in court? You think a piece of paper is going to stop me?" James swung down from his horse, his men right behind him. "You think some quick wedding means a thing?" "I think it means you cannot just ride in here and take these children," Ethan said, raising his rifle just a bit. "Not without proving Martha is unfit, which she is not. And not without showing you can provide a better home, which you cannot. It means you need to get off my land before this turns into something none of us want." "Bold words for 1 man against 3, James sneered. "2, Martha's voice cut through the tense air. She had stepped onto the porch, her rifle aimed steady. 2 against 3. And there are 3 more guns in this house if we need them. My children know how to shoot, Mr. Hale. I made certain of it. James stared between them, his bluster fading. You really want to start a fight over this? You started this fight when you followed us and threatened my family. Martha's voice was like flint. I ran from your brother Daniel to keep my children safe. But I am done with running. If you want them, you have to go through us. You have to go through the law. You do it the right way, or you do not do it at all. The law sides with blood, James insisted. The law sides with a safe and stable home, Ethan said, taking a step forward. A 2-parent household on good land against a single man with a violent past. Oh yeah, we know about your history, James. We asked around. People remember the fights. They remember the woman in Ohio who pressed charges before you paid her off. You are not the respectable man you pretend to be. James's face turned dark with fury. You looked into my past? I did my homework, Ethan said. Now, here is what is going to happen. You are going to take your man and ride away. You will take your worthless papers with you, and you will leave my family alone. Or what? James challenged. Or I will file charges for harassment, Ethan stated plainly. I will get a restraining order. I will make your life so tangled up in legal trouble that this will not be worth your time. They are my blood. Blood does not give you ownership. Martha's voice was sharp. I was married to your brother for 10 years. 10 years of walking on eggshells and teaching my children to be invisible so he would not get angry. I will not put them through that ever again. Not for you, not for anyone. I am not Daniel, James spat. You are just like him, Martha replied, her hands trembling but her aim true. You want control, not family. The answer is no. It will always be no. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then one of James's men shifted uncomfortably. Boss, maybe we should think about this. A legal marriage and adoption papers change things. This could get messy. We are not leaving, James started to say. Yeah, we are, the second man said, already turning his horse. I signed on for easy money, not for a gunfight with a family on their own land. I am out. The other man followed, leaving James standing there alone, filled with helpless anger. He glared at Ethan and Martha. This is not over. Yes, it is. Ethan's voice was final. It is over because you do not really care about those children. You only care about winning. And you just lost. Accept it and move on. James stared at him with pure hatred, then mounted his horse and rode away without another word. Ethan and Martha stood in the yard long after he was gone, just in case. But all that came back was the sound of birds singing. Finally, Martha lowered her rifle, her hands shaking. Is it really over? I think so, Ethan said, gently taking the rifle from her. He knows he cannot win a legal fight, and he does not care enough to risk anything else. What if you are wrong? Then we will deal with it, he said, waiting for her to meet his eyes. But Martha, look at me. You stood up to him. You did not run. You claimed your right to your own life. That is everything. Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling. I have never done that before. You did today, he said softly. And you were magnificent. The door burst open and the 3 children ran out, surrounding their mother in a big hug, all of them talking at once, making sure she was okay. We did it, Sarah yelled over to Ethan, a huge, genuine smile on her face. You all did it, Ethan corrected. Your mama did it. I was just backup. You were more than that, Martha said, moving to stand beside him. You gave us a place to stand our ground. Without you, we would still be running. And without you all, he said, I would still be hiding. So I would say, we are even. They stood together in the warm spring sun, this new little family, and let the relief wash over them. It was over for now, and for now that was more than enough. The weeks that followed felt like a new beginning. The ranch came alive. Clara found the first wildflowers. Thomas learned to collect eggs without breaking any, and Sarah helped Ethan with the spring planting, her sharp mind asking smart questions. And Martha, she finally started to relax. The constant fear she lived with began to fade away, replaced by a quiet, steady peace. Her laugh started coming easier these days. Now she was still his wife on paper only, sleeping in her own room and keeping a careful distance. But the walls they'd built between them were getting lower. One warm May evening, with the kids tucked in bed, they sat on the porch, watching the stars pop out in a sky finally free from the winter's white glow. Martha spoke carefully, breaking the quiet. "I have been thinking about what we have here, this life we have put together." Ethan felt his gut tighten. "And I reckon it has become more than we bargained for. Maybe not what folks call a real marriage, but it is something real." In the dim light, she looked right at him. "You are a good father to those children, a better one than Daniel ever was. They trust you. I think they even love you, though they are still figuring out what that ought to look like from a man. They are good kids," he said, "easy to care for." "And what about me? Am I easy to care for?" The question hung heavy in the air, full of a vulnerability she hardly ever showed. Ethan chose his words with care. "You are one of the strongest women I have ever known. You are sensible and brave, and you have made this house a home. So yes, you are easy to care for, easy to respect." He searched for the right words. "Easy to build a life with, but not easy to love." "I did not say that." He turned to face her straight on. "Martha, I do not know what this is between us. It started out as a practical matter, for safety and for mutual need. But somewhere down the line, it turned into something else. It is something I do not have a name for yet. Maybe it is love, or maybe it is just a deep partnership. Does it really need a label? I suppose it does not." Martha was quiet for a long moment. "I was so sure I would never trust another man, never let one get close to me again. But you have been nothing but decent and kind and patient. You gave us a safe place to land without asking for anything. I do not rightly know what to do with that. Then do not try to do anything with it. Just let it be." Ethan reached over and took her hand in his. "We have got time. No more looking over our shoulder. We can figure this out at our own speed." Martha's fingers slowly wrapped around his. They were hesitant, but they were there. "What if I can never want a real marriage? What if this here is the best I can do? Then this is what we have. I am not going anywhere, Martha. Whether things stay just like this or change into something new, I am in this for the long haul, with you and with those children. That does not depend on romance or passion. You are a strange man, Ethan Cole. I have been told that a time or two." A small smile touched his lips in the darkness. "But I am your strange man now, for better or for worse." "For better or for worse," she repeated softly. And this time her smile was genuine, reaching all the way to her eyes. They sat like that for a good while, holding hands and watching the stars move across the big Texas sky. Just two people who found one another when they needed it most, building something solid out of pure grit and choice. The summer rolled in hot and bright, and the work kept them all busy from sunup to sundown. The children blossomed in the warmth. Sarah got handy with the ranch chores. Clara, it turned out, had a real knack for gardening. And little Thomas grew stronger and braver with every passing day. In the middle of all the daily routines and shared meals around a full table, Ethan and Martha found they were building something that looked a whole lot like a true marriage. It was not a storybook romance, but maybe something even tougher. It was a partnership built on a foundation of trust and respect. They both knew they had faced down danger together and come out on the other side. Martha still had her own room and her own space, but the lines started to blur as the weeks went by. A hand on his shoulder as she walked past. A shared smile from across the dinner table. Quiet talks that went late into the night. It was all the small things, adding up to something bigger than either of them had ever expected. One night in August, with the harvest getting close, Martha came to Ethan's door. This time, her face was not uncertain. It was set with purpose. "I have been thinking," she said, getting straight to the point, "about this marriage. About us. All right? Ethan put down his book. I do not know if I can ever be a wife in the way most folks mean. Daniel took that from me in ways I'm still trying to understand, but I think... She started. She took a deep breath like a person about to jump into cold water. I am thinking we could be more than just partners on paper, to see if we could build something real. Ethan rose from his chair and walked over to her. Are you sure about that, Martha? There is no pressure here. What we have is good enough. It might be for you, she said, her voice soft but steady. But I have been only half living for so long, scared to want more than just getting by. You showed me there is more to life if I can just find the courage to reach for it. Her eyes met his, clear and direct. So I am reaching. If you will have me for real. Not just because the law says so, I will have you any way I can get you, Ethan said, his hands gently cupping her face. But we will go at your speed. No rules, just two folks figuring it all out. Together. Together, Martha repeated with a small smile. I surely do like the sound of that. His kiss was a gentle question, leaving her all the room in the world to step away. But she did not. She leaned into it, her hands finding his shoulders. It was not a kiss of passion, but one of promise. When they parted, quiet tears were on her cheeks. I never thought I could let someone get that close again. You did it, though, he said softly. You were brave. We were brave, she corrected, a watery smile on her face. Together. The fall that came after felt like a golden season, warm and full of the quiet joy that comes from good, hard work. They brought in the harvest as a family, putting up food and preparing the ranch for the coming cold. But this time they were not strangers making a deal. They were a true family. Sarah declared she would be a rancher just like Ethan. Clara found she had a knack for predicting the weather by watching the animals. And Thomas, he finally lost his fear of loud sounds and started trailing Ethan like a small, curious shadow, learning that a man could be both strong and gentle. As for Martha, she bloomed. The laughter came easy now, and she would sing softly while she worked. The hard lines that fear had carved into her face began to soften. Their marriage never did become what most folks would call traditional. The closeness they shared was something deeper. It was in the comfortable silence between them, in working side by side, and in raising 3 children who needed them both. They were building a life that truly mattered. When the first snow fell that November, a year after she and the children had arrived, they all stood on the porch together. Another winter, Sarah said. You reckon it will be as tough as the last one? No, Ethan answered without a hint of doubt. Last year, we were just folks learning to trust one another. This year, we are a family. That makes all the difference in the world. And if Uncle James decides to show his face again, we will handle it. Martha's voice was firm, just like we did before. Together. Thomas pulled on Ethan's hand. Pa? Will you read us a story tonight? The one about the big bear? Ethan's throat felt tight. It was the first time the boy had called him Pa without even thinking about it. He looked over at Martha and saw her eyes were misty, just like his. Of course, buddy, I will read to you, just like every night. Good, Thomas said, leaning against his leg with complete trust. I like it when you read. Your voice makes the scary parts go away. They all went inside as the snow began to fall thick and fast, closing the door on the cold. Ethan read to the children by the warm stove while Martha mended a shirt in the lamplight. Everything felt right. This was not the life Ethan had pictured when he put up that sign for a cook. It was a whole lot messier and more complicated. But it was also richer and more meaningful than anything he could have ever planned on his own. Winter had brought him a woman and 3 children looking for a safe place to land. He had offered them that, never expecting a thing in return. And somehow, out of nothing but kindness and need, they had all found the one thing they were not even looking for. A family. One built not on blood, but on choice and trust, and the simple promise to face whatever came their way together. Outside, the snow piled up, blanketing the whole world in white. But inside Hollow Ridge Ranch, a good fire burned bright, and 5 people felt safe and sound. They had all been broken in their own ways. But here, in the dead of winter, they had taken their broken pieces and built something whole. It was not perfect, and it was not ordinary, but it was real, and it was strong. As Ethan's voice filled the quiet room with tales of heroes and courage, he knew with absolute certainty that he would never be truly alone again. Not with Martha's steady presence beside him, not with 3 children who called this ranch their home, and called him something mighty close to a father. The seasons would turn, and the years would pass, but this family, this little group forged in a crisis and held together by choice, would last. And that was more than enough. That was everything. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.